So I think, at least from my perspective, that being a country bumpkin, so that's what we called it in our family, like somebody just from the country, didn't grow up with a lot, but has is taught some skills, um, is extraordinarily beneficial because you can make a whole boatload of money. Now, why is that the case? I think the case is that you're not afraid of going backwards. You're not afraid of doing things that would be considered dirty work. You're not afraid of what are people going to think of you? All of those kind of things because that's what you grew up with, right? Like that's at least my experience is like I've never had to worry about, there's this weird thing that and I'll get to a point very, very quickly. There's this weird thing that I could never figure out that people were like, I would never live there, right? Like they would have that reaction in a real, like they were almost ready to vomit it in their mouth, like a real nasty reaction that they're like, "Ugh, I would never live in that particular location." You name it, right? Like, um, and it's usually some small town or whatever, right? Like, and me, and I've experienced this ever since I moved away from my little dinky town in the middle of nowhere. Um, that I'm just kind of laughing. I'm like, I actually love it because I know something that you don't know. And that is that it's often a lot less expensive to live in a town like that. And the biggest thing for you to become extraordinarily wealthy is for you to take a significant portion of what you actually make and throw it into the stock market in a very systematic way. A systematic way is what we know is index funds, mutual funds that have been around for a long time. Right. So the more that you actually do that, my goal is always, or our goal is always 15% of everything we make. We far exceed that. Every year we just dump it in. And then we, just watch it. Right? We never bet on the fact that I never place any particular bets. The only bet that I've been placing a bet on is the reciprocity project, right? Like I actually want to make this thing profitable. I want to get like returns on it eventually because it's the only way it's sustainable. But um at the same time, I am very, very worried about like my retirement and all that kind of stuff. So it's only a small part of what I'm investing in, and most of it's going into mutual funds. And the only way that you could do this, right? Index funds, it's just a broad swath across all of the companies on the stock market. Mutual funds, they sort of pick the best ones, but they generally are, all the companies that you've ever heard about. And it might be like 200 of all the companies that you've ever heard about. Um, and, you just put your money in those particular things. And what we know by doing that is that it goes up every year, boring, boring, boring. And there's no like worrying or anything like that that's affiliated with it. Now, why is it so important to be a country bumpkin is because like these places, there's often, if you're really smart, you can look for these opportunities. They're called arbitrage opportunities where you buy low and sell high. Right. So the arbitrage opportunities is where often people have these sort of distastes for where you're going to live. And you realize that they're actually really wonderful places. They just don't have nearly as many restaurants or whatever, like walking downtown, those kind of things. But they really tend to be quite pleasant because you can live a normal, somewhat normal life. And then the rest of it you can invest. Now, this is a long run play that people, this is the same sort of reaction that you get with the people wanting something very quickly. It's the long run play is you do this, right? And as long as you're taking that 15% or more, hopefully it's, much more, um, you know, not too much more, but more that you're doing this and you're socking away. And so at some point in the future, you will get to a moment because you're not gambling. You're sort of wisely investing. If you look at returns, stock market returns in this kind of way that I'm suggesting, it's nothing crazy. Um, it will return you 10% per year. 10% is like golden over the course of 30, 40 years. And it's a boatload of money by the time you do that, even if you have a small salary, right? Like you do this, even if you did this with, say, you're making 50 grand a year and you take $5,000 and you put it into index funds and mutual funds, you would have a boatload of money after the course of 30 years. And you could almost live anywhere once you're doing that. Even in the cities that you probably have heard about, that people are like, oh, I would never live there. And, that's not possible. And you could look for these ways to do arbitrage opportunities, right? And it's really just being smart. It's being easygoing often, where you're just like, you know what, this is a possibility. And it's the same thing with a car, right? Like people want to buy some specific car up front because that's really what they want. Well, you're often overpaying for those kind of cars. But if you're easygoing, you're like, whatevs. I can have whatever car I want, and it doesn't really matter. And if I sock away instead of investing in an asset that goes down in value, and I do this for a long time, I'm gonna have so much money at the end of it that I could buy whatever car I want. Right? There's a saying, and I've talked about him many times on this channel. This is Dave Ramsey. I used to listen to him a fair bit, and he has a saying where it's you you live like nobody else, so eventually you can live like nobody else. And that is the truth. If you do this, you follow these things, and you follow the basic pattern of what is suggested, right? Where you invest in a boatload of index funds for a long time and mutual funds for a long time, and you do that repeatedly for a long time, and then you have insurances that so you don't lose that capability. And you do that for such a long time that eventually you get to a moment where you look up and you're like, wow, you know what? I can actually do a lot with my life. I can choose whatever the hell I want. Right. And that's the goal. That's it. And that's where as somebody that is a country bumpkin, you often can do these things because you're just easygoing with it. You don't really care, right? Like, who cares about the car you drive or where you live or any of that kind of stuff? It doesn't matter, right? What matters is the fact that you are setting yourself up and everybody else in your family um, for the long run and doing well by doing that. That's an important thing. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.